Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome back. So in our last session, we explored environmental scanning, how organizations track their external environment and internal capabilities to identify opportunities and threats. Today, we move to the next stage of the strategic management process, that is strategy formulation. This is where analysis is transformed into clear roadmap for action. At this stage, firms define their missions, set objectives, and design guiding policies that shape how they compete and grow. Think of it as drawing the blueprint before the construction begins. But the real world strategy is rarely straightforward because most markets are imperfect. Firms face monopolistic competition, oligopolies, duopolies, and monopolies, where pricing, innovation, and cooperation all come into play. We will examine not only how firms compete, but also how they sometimes collaborate through alliances, partnerships, and joint ventures to strengthen their position. By the end of this lecture, I hope you will see that strategy formulation is about making deliberate choices in a complex, imperfect, and often interdependent environment. So, as I mentioned, we have 4 dimensions of this strategic management. So, the first one, as I mentioned, the strategic formulation. So, strategic formulation means this is the process of setting the foundation for how a firm competes in its environment. So, it's not just about choosing goals, but carefully analyzing strengths, identifying weaknesses, and recognizing growth opportunities. So, at this stage, firms define their mission, establish achievable objectives, and create guiding policies. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, think of it just like designing the blueprint before the actual construction begins. So, this figure, as I shown in the previous section as well, we are focusing on this second block of this figure. It shows how the complete strategic formulation takes place. So, first you can see the mission, then the objectives, then strategies and policies. So, the process is dynamic, not a one time, it is a loop of continuous improvement starting from environment scanning to finally to evaluation and control. In this case, the strategic formulation becomes an important block in the strategic management. So, let me show you SFAS metrics. So, the SFAS matrix is a practical tool that goes beyond the SWOT analysis. I am sure you are familiar with the SWOT analysis, that is the listing the strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So, instead of a long list of strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats, it forces managers to prioritize and condense these into a smaller number of key factors. So, these strategic factors are weighted and scored using the tool like SFAS metrics, and which helps decision makers focus on what really matters for the firm for formulating strategy. So, here is the real example of the SFAS metrics applied to Maytag, a firm. So, notice how each factor, the strength, weakness, opportunity or threat, is assigned a weight and rating. So, you can see first one here, the internal strategic factors, these are the strength, and these are the weakness. Then for the external strategic factors, they have listed out key opportunities and key threats. You can see in the real world there can be n number of strength, weakness, opportunities and threats, but after doing careful studies for research on this topic, they have narrowed down the key dimensions, key aspects, key elements here. So that has been listed here, for example S1, S2, S3, S4, S5. So you can go through this one by one. For example, quality MATEC culture, that is for internally because it's on culture, and similarly for the weakness is process oriented R&D that is associated with this firm. So then going to external strategic factors associated with this firm, you can see what are all the opportunities. They have listed out 5 opportunities and they have listed out 5 threats. And you can also see that all these strength, weakness, opportunities and threats, they are not equally weighted. For example, you can see that the quality MATEC culture, it has been given a weightage of 0.15, and finally is total to 100. So you can see in the internal strategic factors what is the weightage. So there are total 10 factors here, you can see 10 factors here, but out of that the weightage also you can see is not uniformly distributed. For instance, you can see that the last one, the 10th one in the internal strategic factors, you can see the global positioning is given a weightage of 20%. And then moving to external strategic factors, here also they see there are 10 factors have been identified under the opportunities and threats, but they are not given equal weightage. For instance, opening Eastern Europe, it has given only a small weightage, but the Japanese appliance companies, they have given a high weight, that a 10% weightage here. And not only the weightage they have given, so they also give different ratings. The ratings also are given in a scale. So this framework, this helps managers to quantify which areas are most critical. So for example, Meta had a strong culture, but as a was weak in global positioning. So accordingly, the weightage is given. So using this tool, managers can decide whether to exploit strength or correct weakness or respond to threat. So this kind of each and every firm, they develop this kind of metrics by internalizing their own internal strategic factors and external strategic factors. And this is the real world, as I mentioned, this is the real example of a matrix applied to MATEC. Moving further, the porters also have listed out competitive strategies. They have listed out firms have competitive strategies sometimes when they enjoy cost leadership. So in a particular industry, if some of the firms they can produce goods or services at a lower cost, then offering lower prices and attracting more customers, so they are then providing a cost leadership. So if there are some cost leaders in the industry, other firms try to follow them. And then the product differentiation. Product differentiation is another competitive strategy being used by the firms. They do it by offering unique products. Product differentiation takes place in the form of quality, design and service. Even in the mobile phone segments, you can see there are different firms operate, but each firm or each product, they may offer a unique product. That means when you buy a mobile phone from Samsung or Oppo or other companies, it's not same. These are all different product, though they are, the purpose is same. That means to make a phone call and do the browsing and do the other related activities on the phone. But you know that the kind of the product differentiation that they have made by R&D and also by the advertisement and all. So they make product differentiation that create a kind of unique market value for their products, and that will be valued by a separate group of customers. So in the industry, normally the firms, they focus either on cost leadership or a product differentiation, and often they try to focus on both. So where they can do well, they try to achieve their advantage there. So the research evidence tells us these strategies work differently depending on the context. So in emerging economies like Iran, cost leadership tends to improve financial leverage and performance. In China, studies found differentiation works better in highly concentrated markets. So the key lesson is there is no universal best strategy. This must align with the industry environment and the firm's capabilities. And importantly, the competitive advantage don't last forever. So in hyper competitive markets, new technologies, short product cycles and new entrants constantly erode advantages. You may recall that at one point of time, Kodak films, they have been producing films, and Kodak cameras and Kodak films, they had a unique market advantage at one point of time. But when the digital camera came, Kodak unique competitive advantage disappeared from the market. So that means they need to be aware of the potential threats maybe coming from technological advancement or shorter product cycle or by new entrants constantly eroding their competitive advantage. So the industry structure matters too. Fragmented industries are tougher to compete in as compared to very consolidated industries. Just for instance, consider the Ford's $5 day wage strategy in 1914. So just a brief about how Ford, for the owner of the Ford Motors in 1914, used the strategy of $5 a day as the wage. So what is the objective behind that? Because the main concern was that when a firm is hiring a labor, so they want to, in order to improve the productivity, what required was that they should be incentivized. So what Ford did was that he paid a salary, the wage, much above their opportunity cost, much above their marginal product or the wage that can earn from other working elsewhere. So suppose they have been, the market wage has been, for example, $3 per day. Ford gave $5 per day. So this made the workers becoming more loyal to the company, and there is no attrition, so the retention rate was very high. So you know that when any firm, when they are hiring new firms, they need to give training. There will be HR cost, recruitment cost, and then giving training, and then continuous, when over time when they are working in this firm, in this company, they acquire new skills and techniques. So then an important thing is that they need to retain this skill set. So in that way, what Ford thought was that by paying a higher salary, higher wage as compared to their market wage, and as I mentioned, Ford paid $5 per day. At that time, the ongoing market wage was only $3. So initially it gave him lots of dividend because the retention rate was very high and the productivity of the firm increased, and the firm began to make lots of profit because he has a very competitive and loyal worker base. But eventually what happened that other firms didn't sit idle. They also began to implement the same strategy. They also began to increase the wage. So that means when others also increase the wage, so what the Ford did, these strategies effectiveness diminished over time because the competitors also followed the same strategy. So this strategy initially revolutionary. Everyone thought that okay, this is that Ford is going to have a competitive advantage, but once the others copied, the advantage faded. So this highlights the importance of innovation and adaptability. And let me now also relate it with the with the strategy formulation to another key aspects, that is called market power. That means market power matters. So the market power refers to the degree of control firms have over price and competition. So the stronger the market power, the more influence a firm has. So economists classify markets into four main types. One is perfect competition, then the monopolistic competition, monopoly and oligopoly. So each structure shapes how strategies are formulated and how firms compete with each other. So to classify the market structure, there are few criteria followed. this includes how much control a firm has over the price, and then how many firms compete in the market, and how large are the firms, and what are the product characteristics, and how easy is entry for new firms. And let us begin one by one discussing each of the market forms. One is perfect competition. So, perfect competition is an idealized form of market. So, in this market forms can enter and exit freely, and the products are homogeneous. That means each products are comparable to each other, and no single firm can influence the price. That means the price is set by the market mechanism, by the demand and supply, and a single firm cannot be the price setter but only a price taker. Similarly, an individual buyer, he or she is only a price taker, not a price maker. But in the market mechanism overall, the market demand and market supply, they combinedly collectively determine the price to be charged and the quantity to be produced in the market. And here, as I mentioned, sellers and buyers both are price takers, and there is also perfect information in the market to ensure transparency. So, what we can see that the glimpses of this we can see in stock exchanges, currency markets, and even agricultural markets like wheat. But the real question is that, do these markets really fit the model or only partially? Because the real world is not perfect competitive market. These are all imperfect competitive market. So, today, as I mentioned, we will move mostly we move beyond perfect competition and look at imperfect market structure. So, these markets better reflect reality because products are not identical. Firms may have market power, and entry barriers often exist. And more specifically, we will focus on 4 types of imperfect market forms. One is called monopolistic competition, second one is oligopoly, and the third one is monopoly, and the last one is monopsony. So, each of these market form has unique features and implication for pricing, output, and strategy. So, begin with the first market form, that is called monopolistic competitive market form. This is the most prevalent market forms in our that we can see in our day-to-day life. That means in the real world, the most of the kind of market forms that we are living is monopolistic competitive market forms. So, in this market form, products are similar but identical. So, you can see, for example, the garments garment markets, you can see there are large number of producers are there, but what you can see that there are large number of producers are there, but there are some kind of branding is there, advertisement is there, quality differences are there. So, that means each firm, they will be having some kind of monopoly power over their product. At the same time, they need to compete with the others. That means a kind of monopoly plus competition, that means monopolistic competition. So, you can think of that the firms differentiate through branding, packaging, or advertising. So, think of restaurants or clothing shops, each offers something unique. So, while there are many sellers, you can see that each firms enjoy a small degree of monopoly due to the product differentiation. And then moving to another kind of market forms, that is called oligopoly market forms. In the oligopoly market form, there are only few large firms, they dominate the market, and there are high entry barrier is there because the firms are interdependent. Since the firms are interdependent, so because of that there is some kind of non-price competitions prevails. Since, as I mentioned, the interdependencies are very high, this is at the interest of all these firms. There are only few firms. It is at their best interest to have a price stability within the market where they operate. So, there is also a kind of risk of collusion. They often collude each other in order to make profit. So overall, there is a high degree of interdependence between firms. So the examples of oligopoly firms are airlines. You can see in Indian airline markets there are only few airlines, and similarly banks, there are only few banks, and oil companies, cars companies, and telecoms. These are all the examples of oligopoly markets. Then let us move to another kind of imperfect market form, duopoly. So duopoly is a special case of oligopoly where only two firms dominate, and here the rivalry is intense, but price leadership often emerges. So for instance, in aircraft manufacturing, you know that Boeing and Airbus dominate, and their pricing and innovation strategies largely shape the industry. And then another market form, that is the extreme form of imperfect market, that is called monopoly firm. Monopoly firm exists when one firm control the entire supply. Here the firm and industry is one and same, and there is entry barriers, mainly because of patents, natural resource ownership, or huge infrastructure needs, and it prevent rivals from entering. You can just think about Indian Railway. If someone wants to enter, you know that it is very difficult because railway already has a huge infrastructure facilities, and it will be difficult for a new transportation company to establish all these infrastructure. All these prevent rivals from entering. So utilities like electricity are natural monopolies. So monopolies can charge higher prices and practice price discrimination and restrict consumer choice. So a monopoly exists when, as I mentioned, firm controls the entire supply. The monopolies can be good or bad. On one hand, economies of scale reduce costs, and monopolies may invest heavily in R&D. On the other hand, monopolies may exploit consumers with higher prices and fewer options. So that's why regulation is important. So it is at the interest of the public policy and social welfare that to regulate the emergence of monopoly in economies. While monopoly refers to a single seller, then monopsony refers to a single buyer. So for instance, when a government is the only buyer of vaccine, it controls the price. You know that government is a main buyer of vaccine, so it has a control over price. So similarly, large supermarkets may dominate negotiations with farmers because they are the single largest buyer for the agriculture products from the farmers. So this power imbalance can lead to inefficiencies. So competition is not the only path to survival. Sometimes firms cooperate. This cooperation can take the form of coalition, which is often illegal, or strategic alliances, so which can be legitimate and mutually beneficial. Coming to the cooperative strategies, the first one is called collusion. Collusion happens when firms cooperate instead of competing. So explicit collusions like forming a cartel is illegal in most countries. However, there can be tacit collusion where firms indirectly align behavior is harder to detect for policymakers. So for example, airlines sometimes follow each other's price changes without explicit agreements. And similarly, airlines sometimes they won't enter into the routes being operated by the other airlines. So that means some kind of tacit collusion is there. So this kind of strategic alliance often lead to a decline in consumer welfare. However, for the firm's perspective, it will help them to maximize their profit. So the second aspect is called the cooperative strategy is called strategic alliance. They are formal partnerships such as those among airlines. So instead of competing fiercely, firms collaborate on routes, logistics and technology. And you might have heard about Star Alliance, Sky Team or One World. What they do that, this is a kind of strategic alliance by airlines. So, studies show alliances increase profitability and market presence. However, the line between legitimate cooperation and cartel-like behavior can sometimes be blurry. So, companies often form alliances because going solo is risky and expensive. By partnering, firms can gain access to skills, technology, and expertise. So, alliances are also quick way to enter new markets, especially foreign ones where political barriers may exist. One of the examples is Maytag. It partnered with a Chinese firm to navigate the government restrictions in China. Another big reason is risk sharing. When projects involve high cost or uncertainty, alliances spread the risk among partners. So, strategic alliances come in many forms. A mutual service consortium is when firms share resources for expensive innovations like IBM and Sony working together on chips. And joint ventures are probably the most well known, where two companies create a new entity to share risk and rewards, as P&G did with Clorox. And licensing allows firms like KFC and Subway to expand globally without directly investing in every market. And finally, value chain partnership are long-term collaboration with the suppliers and distributors that strengthen the entire supply chain, like Facebook teaming up with news organization like New York Times, NBC, etc. to post stories directly on its platform. So, while alliances offer many benefits, they also come with challenges. So, main advantages include cost sharing, faster access to markets and new technology. But conflicts often arise when partners have different goals or when one feels they are contributing more than the other. So, another concern is knowledge leakage. Partners might gain access to your expertise and later turn into your competitor. So, strategic alliances are powerful, but they need careful management. So, to conclude, we began with the idea of strategic formulation, how firms set their foundations, mission and objectives before moving into action. So, in reality, firms operate in imperfect markets like monopolistic competition, oligopoly market, duopoly market and monopoly market. So, each brings unique challenges and opportunities for shaping strategy. We also saw that strategy is not always about pure competition. Sometimes cooperation is there through alliances, partnership and joint ventures. It all becomes essential for survival and growth. With this, we have set the stage for understanding how firms craft strategies not only to compete but also to thrive in a dynamic business environment. Thank you for watching this session and see you in the next session. Thank you.